7 o'clock on March 27th, Monday, 2023. Roll call, please.
Director Dyke?
Here.
Director Radek?
Here.
Director Radek?
Here.
Director Decker?
Here.
Director Clark?
Here.
Chair Slater Carter?
Present. Welcome, everyone. Moving right along to public comment, oral communication for items not on the agenda. We'll see how this works, if I can see hands or not. Okay. Matthew, let's start with you.
My comment is, I hope, really hope, fervently hope even, that this is the last 301 page packet that I received. This is, we get these Friday afternoon and electronically, and as someone who tries his best to read every page, there went my weekend, and it's silly. And this particular packet contains way more. What TJC, what do we have, 100 pages of their report? The directors don't need to see every picture, 5 different views of an 8x10 building, or 5 different of same photos of these buildings. I think these things could be easily culled down. There's way too much in here that the directors simply don't need to see. Technical specifications. I'm not an engineer. I don't know how tight the screws are supposed to go. And so I can't really judge that. And I think this could have been cut 90%. So that's my comment.
Perfect. In future, we will not have these attachments, and if required, people can request it in advance and we can get it. Absolutely no problem. We give only the relevant attachments to the item that is required for approval.
When the attachments are a report, which is 4 pages of summary, that's what the directors need, in my opinion. We don't need the next 65 pages of seismic, sheet after sheet of seismic reports, et cetera, for federal purposes.
Perfect. Understood. We'll make sure that we comply with your request in future.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a concern about when we don't get the agenda package till late on Friday. If there is something we want to see, that doesn't give us much time. I mean, I know there's your goal is to get the agenda packages to us sooner, right? We used to get them on Thursday. We're supposed to get them on Wednesday.
That's true, but we have some items for which we would have to wait till Friday. So instead of pushing it to the next meeting, then we try to wait until Friday. But if the directors have not found time to go through that, we can always push it to the next meeting. Sometimes some things are easy, so there are many questions and we can get it approved in the same meeting. But if they need more clarifications, you can bring it back to the next meeting.
Well, I hate to slow things down. My suggestion is that you can put the item on the agenda and put the management recommendation and then give us the detail on Friday or whenever so that people can look at it. If they want more detail, they can get it. I think I'm trying to find a balance between losing time because the economy is in a place, there's a lot of things we don't want to put off. And but some stuff is simpler and it's probably ready to go. So let's talk about it some more, but.
Yeah, keep in mind that whatever I share with the directors prior to the meeting, I have to also share it to the public.
Oh yeah.
So if I give it to you, I'll have to post it on the web as a draft meeting or as an abstract, and then pull it off and put the later one. So it might be a little confusing, but they can try. If you want me to do that, that will require more staff time, pulling it off, putting it back. Yeah.
Well,
we have to put that on the website. We have to distribute it to everybody, to all the 25 people that we send out the board packets.
And when does it have to go out to the public?
It has to go at the same time, and it's communicated to the directors.
So can we get it before Friday?
We try our best to do it before Friday. We've been doing it on Thursday a lot of times, but I thought Friday 7 p.m. is the deadline given. As per requirements, we do it much before 7. We do it by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock on Fridays. And we try our best. But there are a lot of things for which sometimes we wait for quotations. We try to get the approval earlier. Well, if you wanted to have a cutoff only on Wednesday or Thursday, we can try and do that. But a lot of times there may not be any items on the agenda to discuss.
Well, let's figure out how to do this offline. We've heard both sides of the story now, so we can have it maybe as an operations committee agenda item.
I didn't understand what you said about having to send it out twice.
The moment I send out the packet, like a draft packet or all the information which is being discussed in the board meeting to the directors, I have to make it public also.
Right.
That's what it is, meaning twice, because I have to put an abridged version. What the chair was saying was put an abridged version of the packet, some staff, some summary and things like that, send it out to the directors. So if I send it to the directors, I have to also give it to the public at the same time. And the only way that I can do it to the public is by posting it on the website and sending the group email to all the people concerned. So that is number one. And second time, when the draft or when the complete report is made, I have to recirculate it again and pull out the earlier one.
There's one list with directors on it, and there's another list of public people who've requested it. That seems simple enough.
No, it's not simple, Director Clark. It's not.
Discuss this in a committee.
No, I'd like to make it very clear. It's not simple. It's not one list going only to Director Dyer or only to Director Clark. When I have to give any item on the board packet, I have to give it to all the directors, all the 6 directors, right?
Of course.
Correct.
Understood.
So of course, so when we go to all 6 directors, it's my requirement to also give it to the public at the same time.
Of course.
So that's why, and I have to put it on the website at the same time.
Right.
I have to put it on the website for the public to access it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, no.
So when I do it the next time, when I do the full version, don't you want me to pull out the old one?
No.
So do you want me to call it as summary version and then the full version?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's allowed.
What would be the difference between the summary version and the full version? You're going to send all this technical stuff out to everyone? Would it not suffice to say, if you'd like to see all the technical support for this report summary, just let us know?
I don't understand your concern at all. You're saying that the technical report should not be attached, well, no matter whether it's summary or whether it's full report, right? That was your first concern.
I'm saying that the agenda packet that the directors get and the agenda packet that the public gets should be the same.
Yes, absolutely. I have no doubt on that. I'm not contemplating on that at all. It will definitely be the same. I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't understand what the problem is then. Why?
I understand. I understand what your problem is, that you should get a thick packet of 300 pages, that the report should not be attached. We understood that. We'll ensure that in future you don't get the complete technical report. We'll probably cut and paste and say this is the abridged version of the report. And that will shorten the list to maybe half or 3/4, whatever. That was your first concern. We'll make sure that will comply with. And the second concern was from Director Dye, who said that Fridays is a little too late. She wants it a little earlier. We'll try our best to get it earlier than Friday. We'll see what best can be done. If you want to have a cutoff Wednesday or Thursday, we can still do that. And whatever is ready will be ready at that point of time. Because 2 meetings in a row, I mean, every other Monday becomes difficult because managers first, it has to be approved by the managers, and that happens only on Monday afternoon. The managers have to go to the agenda item. And after Monday, it gets clear. Then we have to make some changes. Then it becomes Tuesday, Wednesday. So many other things keep coming.
Yeah,
so there's practical issues.
There's a whole stream of approvals involved in this. Again, let's discuss this offline as a committee, and we can go into it at more detail. I don't see any hands. Oh, you do too, and I don't see any hands on the screen. If anybody wants to make a comment. Oh, I see Jeremy.
Yeah, so I just in this, I'll keep it real short. So this will be for Ops Committee if we want to talk about it. But there are ways the things that can be done to keep it shorter, and I can provide those later at your convenience.
Thank you, Keaton.
Yeah, I would like to welcome our grade 2 operator, David Fechu. He is on Zoom.
David, I'm looking for his name.
There he is.
Fetu.
Yeah, Fechu, he joined us as a grade 2 wastewater treatment operator.
Welcome.
He joined us last week. And Tim, you can talk a few words about him. What is the background?
So a little bit about his background. He has, I'm looking at this right now. He has electrical power system instrumentation that he's going through at the College of San Mateo. He also did HVAC training at San Jose State. He served his time, if he would, to get his actual certification and everything at the city of Palo Alto at their wastewater treatment facility. Size-wise, footprint-wise is about the same as us, but I do think they see more coming through. Yeah, and then he went from there. He went to the Meta campus with their Blackwater system, its recycled water system. So he was started on that, but they decided they were going to shut down. Not really something that he wanted to go back into the maintenance side. He wanted to stay in operations. So we reached out and we were able to kind of come to this side. So yeah, so David, welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited to be here at SAMS. Thank you.
I think you'll like working here.
Oh, definitely. It's been a great first week. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. Greg? No? Okay. Moving right along then to consent agenda.
No, I would like to make a comment, if you don't mind.
No, I was missing you.
Yeah, sorry to be late. I've been working on a series of crisp infrastructure projects. One of them's with Cabrillo School, and I was on with Sean McFetteridge, and I lost the time. But among those 10 infrastructure projects where we have deficiencies on the coast is telecommunications. The MCC's prepared a report. It's a tidy 380 megabytes in slideshow and a mere 38 megabytes in the printed report. So it's posted on Google Drive on the MCC website. But I would offer Sam the opportunity to look at that report, and I will send you links. And I had a conversation with Tim. I was walking around with a stormwater consultant, I think it was Friday, and he happened to mention some of the challenges you face with your internet connection. One of the outcomes of our report is going to be, besides trying to push an oligopoly to change its behavior, that doesn't work, to form our own community broadband fiber network, which I've come to learn in the research, hundreds of communities throughout the United States have done. Small towns in Utah, Colorado, you name it. So our work group has begun discussion with a local service provider about what we would have to do to get fiber to our homes. I'm not claiming this would save anybody any money, but the speeds would be 100 to 1,000 times faster than what we currently get. And reliability would be much greater because there wouldn't be power poles knocked down. So I just wanted to make that announcement. I've sent some slides to the city of Half Moon Bay, and I hope to speak on this issue at their next meeting. Something about a tree falling on them. So we seem to have some other sustainability issues here too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work on this. Moving on to consent agenda, item 3. A is approve the minutes of March 13, 2023 for the regular board meeting, approve disbursements for March 27, 2023, monthly review and expense report ending February 28, 2022, and the status of the CIP projects for 21, 22, and 22, 23. And it's attached. Do we have anything mentioned?
Yes, I don't want it moved. I just scares me. What is happening with basins 3 and 4?
Basin 4 is getting ready. We just have a few electrical items to be wired up, and then it'll be up and running. We're just waiting for the storm situation to loosen a bit. Then we'll be able to shut off and then try to get 3 and 4 up and running.
Great.
We'll have to drain out 1 and 2 stop and then move everything to 3 and 4.
Great. Good.
Almost ready.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Peter and Deborah. Roll call, please.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Dye?
Aye.
Director Radek?
Aye.
Director Becker?
Aye.
Director Radek?
Yes.
Chair Slater Carter?
Yes. I have a question for Jeremy or Kitchen. If we're all here, we don't need to have a roll call vote. We can just do aye or nay, right?
Correct.
You know, that's correct, but it's not a bad idea because you have people participating remotely, but you don't have to. It's up to you. If you do have someone participating from a teleconferencing location, then you need to do a roll call.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe you can word it differently, saying any objections. That's all. If somebody says yes, then we can have a roll call.
Some of my colleagues say you have to do it every time, even if everybody's present, but I don't agree with that. I think you can get away with it, but it's up to you, chair discretion.
That sounds good. Okay. I have had a request for us to discuss in closed session, discuss closed session between items A and B. Because the closed session item has some relation to the discussion on that would be useful for item B. So in order to switch the agenda around, we need to have a vote to see if we can do that.
I move that we change the agenda to have a closed session after item A before item B.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no objections, we will switch the agenda around so that closed session comes in regular business between item A and B. Moving right along then to discuss and decide if SAM should proceed with testing wastewater for high-risk substance being done by BioBot Analytics.
We are very familiar with BioBot Analytics. They've started working for us since the time the pandemic started. They did the COVID testing of our wastewater. That was in 2021. And after we started doing that, they approached us sometime in October of last year saying that they would also like to test our wastewater for high-risk substance. And that's mainly the fentanyl, methamphetamine, cocaine, and nicotine. So initially, they started their work in the month of November, and they wanted to draw a baseline first, which was discussed in the board ops committee meeting. We then gave them approval to move forward with it. And that baseline has been established, and they've gone ahead with regular testing, just started going ahead with regular testing. So I have the people from BioBot Analytics. We have Julie and Alex here, and they will be doing a start presentation. And over to you, Julie and Alex. You've got control to share your screen. Go ahead, please. Yeah, Alex, you can get started.
Great. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Julie. I am on the customer success team here at BioBot. I've been working closely with Kishen on the high-risk substance pilot, as he had mentioned. We are so excited to be here presenting tonight. First off, I wanted to introduce you to the team from BioBot who will be in attendance at the meeting today. So Alex will be presenting a lot of the data, but the rest of the team will be here to answer any broader questions that you may have. Next up is our agenda for today. So we're going to do a brief overview of our services in general, then go into the high-risk substance program overview, look at trends and data for Sewer Authority Midcoastside specifically, data to action, and then leave some time for any questions that you may have. I'm going to pass it off to Alex, our expert epidemiologist, to begin reviewing BioBot as a whole.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. And so, yeah, as Julie said, my name is Alex Bubin. I'm an epidemiologist here at BioBot Analytics. And so just for those of you who aren't familiar with BioBot's work, I thought I would give a brief synopsis of what we do and who we are. We are a wastewater intelligence company. We believe that wastewater is really the simplest public health monitoring solution to come out in recent times. It's fast. We can detect changes in disease and community drug use in near real time, usually a turnaround of 3 days of lab processing time and another week of reporting. It's secure in that wastewater data are naturally anonymized to protect individual privacy, where all the samples that we take are free of any individually identifying information, and thousands of people at a time are represented in that sample. And it's what I'm most excited about is that it's efficient. As someone who has worked on the state and local public health side before, I'm all too familiar with the limited resources that we have to address a lot of these problems. And so wastewater for us is a means of having cities and towns that can more effectively target those limited resources based on their specific communities. And so BioBot right now is working across the world. And so in all 50 states, in Canada as well, we do work for the CDC, the World Bank, as well as several other state and local departments of public health. And just below are some examples of our current coverage with all of our sampling locations. But today, I'm specifically here to talk about what we call our high-risk substances program, or what we refer to as our HRS program. And so we define high-risk substances as drugs with a potential for harm, and particularly thinking about those that cause addiction, overdose, and death. And so right now, what that looks like is, as you see to the left here, highlighted in blue, are the substances that I'm sure many of you are familiar with their names: fentanyl, methamphetamine, cocaine, and nicotine. The less biochemically inclined among you may notice some of the other things and not necessarily know how they factor into this. And so I will walk you through how exactly we are analyzing the wastewater that comes out of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside catchment area. So using cocaine as an example, we can detect cocaine in wastewater in really one of two, or both of two different ways. So the first and most obvious is that someone consumes cocaine, excretes it in their urine, it ends up at a wastewater treatment plant. In the wastewater, when that occurs, there's two markers that we really look for. There's the first, which is when someone consumes a drug and excretes it. Part of what is left behind is just the drug itself. And so if someone consumes cocaine, we can detect cocaine in the wastewater. The other thing is that as that cocaine is processed by the body, it undergoes a series of biochemical process and generates these chemical signatures of processing by the body that we call metabolites. And so there are usually many different metabolites that are created here, but for our purposes, we focus on what's called the primary metabolite. And this is what allows us to say, yes, there is cocaine in the wastewater, and yes, it was a consumed substance, because the second way that can end up in wastewater is that someone, of course, just flushes it down the toilet. That happens more often than you might think with all of our substances, and then as well with nicotine, where we see cigarette butts and litter get washed into wastewater. It can also present something like that. And so the reason we analyze it like this is because we're able to disentangle what is ending up in wastewater by just being put in the wastewater versus what is there as a product of human consumption. And so as I walk through data, I'll start to tease out a little bit of this and sort of how we look at that. And so moving into what we found from the November period through the of last year through the February period of this year, starting off just kind of with a brief synopsis, as Kishan had already alluded to, that we were sampling at one location here since November 8th of last year, once weekly sampling. And so far we've analyzed 18 of those weekly samples across the population of about 26,000 people. And so looking at cocaine, as Kishan said, this is kind of establishing the baseline of use in the community. The light blue here is what I said was the sort of cocaine, what we know to be unmetabolized cocaine, whereas that dark blue line is called benzoylecgonine, and that is the primary marker that we look at when we're thinking about human consumption of cocaine. Over the 4 months, as you can see here, very stable across the 4 months that we were looking at. That's typically something that we see with cocaine, regardless of location. You may notice one spike in the consumption metabolite. It is New Year's Eve. We see that almost everywhere we look. That is not an unusual sight to see. Now, compared to the rest of the locations that we look at. And so all these comparison data that I'm going to talk about are based off of 114 other sampling locations that we have across 38 states. The cocaine use in this catchment area is extremely low. It's actually in the bottom 20% of all of the other locations that we look at in those other cross-country sampling locations. And so even though I think there's this tendency to see this and see the spike and think that that is necessarily a bad thing, it is not uncommon to see that around the New Year's holiday. And I think just for the most part with this sort of steady trend relative to everywhere we're sampling here, cocaine use seems to be pretty well under control. Now, for something that looks a little bit crazier, and this can always take a second for people to adjust, I walk through a few communities that are like this. And so fentanyl. Again, the light blue line here is that unmetabolized fentanyl, and then the dark blue line is its metabolite norfentanyl, looking at human consumption. It's all over the place. There doesn't seem to be exactly a steady trend. And one of the things I think we can default to is that typically that says, all right, so what is this actually telling me? And it's actually a lot. When I look at this, I look at sort of the numbers that we are seeing here, as well as the relative estimates compared to what we're seeing everywhere else. And I look and see that the consumption of fentanyl levels are in like the bottom 13% of where we are looking everywhere else. The reason why I'm assuming that this is bouncing around as much as it is because not only is the overall problem of fentanyl use relatively low in your catchment area, it probably means that it's isolated to a smaller group of people, which is why as you have smaller groups of people who are driving fentanyl use or any other drug use in a community, things tend to look a little bit bouncier. And so while I would say that, you know, we know now that no fentanyl presence really in a community is ever a good thing. But I would say that for a baseline period of where we are seeing relatively low use and not anything that would indicate an increasing trend for this baseline period, I think that's about as good as you can really get based on some of the other conversations that I've had with other communities across that are really having issues with fentanyl. Moving on to methamphetamine. Methamphetamine is a little bit of a weird one because whereas before I disentangled the metabolite relationship where we look at that for consumption, methamphetamine, a lot of it is excreted just as methamphetamine. And so in this case, we only look at this light blue line as we're seeing here to look at methamphetamine consumption. And so what this tells me is, again, spikes around the winter holidays are another thing that we often see with methamphetamine and cocaine. That doesn't seem to really be any different here, is that we start to see towards the end of December, it peaks, and then actually seems to be dropping back down over the later 2 months of our baseline period. However, you know, I know we had talked about how some of the other relative comparisons for other drugs tend to be on the lower end of what we're seeing. Methamphetamine here is actually in the highest 30% of what we are seeing. And this is something that we start to see a lot across a lot of our West Coast communities that are being hit particularly hard by methamphetamine. I'm in Baltimore on the East Coast. We have fentanyl and methamphetamine isn't a thing. It really is a story of two coasts for something like this. And so you know, while this is high, I think it also is a matter of just kind of the region in which you're situated right now and the trends that we're seeing in methamphetamine use across the nation. Finally, just going into nicotine. Nicotine to me is always one of the least interesting because it tends to not really change a lot across time, except for, like I said, some of these things around the winter holidays and New Year's Eve, like we see here. Again, following, I think, the same sort of trends as cocaine and fentanyl, the nicotine consumption biomarkers that we are seeing here are remarkably low, like in the bottom 8% of all of the other sites that we are sampling at. I don't know whether it's a California thing, because I know I have conversations with other California sampling partners where they are also in the same boat of being in that bottom 10%. But there tends to be something here that to say that relative to a lot of other places, you guys are doing a good job at keeping nicotine consumption really low, even with the advent of vaping devices, as we're now seeing and coming to terms with in the past couple of years. So for me, coming from the public health background, I can't really, I never get behind just collecting data for data's sake. And so when Kishan and I were talking about this, we were saying, you know, how do we actually ensure that these data are being used and not just sitting somewhere on a shelf? And so to talk a little bit about data to action and what other communities are doing with these data, I turned to one of your neighbors. So Marin County, California, we started working with them this past year. And so we are working on a 6-month pilot program that has been covered in the Washington Post, and more recently has gotten attention from CNN and Reuters, where we are using these data in a couple of different ways. And so one would be to identify the areas with the greatest need for substance use treatment and the greatest risk for overdoses for harm reduction measures. 2, to really leverage the fact that they have fantastic improvements in their emergency medical service data streams for calls for overdose services. So really we can start to think proactively about, rather than just responding to when overdoses happen, can we predict and prevent based upon the shifts that we are seeing in wastewater? And again, I think that speaks to the third point, is how can we use these to better inform the interventions that we do in the community to be able to prevent substance use before it's being measured in overdose deaths. And with that, I'd just like to open it up to any questions. I really appreciate y'all giving us some time to be able to talk about the work we've been doing. And with that, the floor is open.
Let's start with the board then, because I can't see the audience. And Barbara.
This is really interesting, and it seems like it could be very valuable. Do we have local entities that have expressed interest in this data and using it?
Not as yet. Not as yet. The sheriff's office, the sheriff's captain had some discussions with us last week, but I do not know whether they would like to, how it's going to be utilized by them. And the county Department of Health, Environmental Health also have reached out to us and wanted to know more about the results. I don't know how they would utilize it, but I did tell them that once the board meeting takes place, then the results can be made public, and I can share the entire 3 months test results with them, and then probably they'll decide whether it's going to be useful or not.
So tonight, do we have to, approve it for a really long time, or can we approve it for a short time to see? Because if nobody's going to use this data, I'm not sure it's worth us spending the money on it. But if it is something that's going to be useful and make a difference in our community, then I do see it as a positive public outreach thing that we can do. Sure. But I don't want to do it unless we know for sure there's somebody who wants to use it.
We don't have to do it for a long time. We could do it for a quarter or something, like 3 months, and then probably bring it back to the board and then see.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would be against, having Sam pay for data for use by other agencies, especially since I think, the information is really valuable at scale, and that would be at the county scale, right? Mm-hmm. So, I think we need to know, who wants the data, who's willing to, to pay for it. I don't see Sam just, gifting it to other public agencies when, we're not really a public policy health agency, et cetera. So I wouldn't be up for, us spending our resources on an ongoing basis to do it. Well, I'd like to see it sort of on an annual basis, because it's just it's not only interesting, I think it's valuable information to have on a region-wide. But I'm curious, there's a new drug out, xylazine. Can you test for that?
So very excited to say that we are starting that for proof of concept at the start of April. So we will be, rolling that out very shortly because it is something that we've been keeping tabs on for a while. And I know that there's been a couple other communities that have also expressed interest in that. For us, it's now just rolling that out from the lab into practice. And then once that occurs, then rolling that up into what we are monitoring.
Thank you. It's of interest because it is not treated by the opioid cure. So if somebody goes into a xylazine overdose, none of the traditional overdose medicine will treat it.
That's interesting. I just don't see it as a SAM problem.
I don't see it as a SAM problem, but I do see it as a community problem. And I think,
and the right agencies to do that are probably like the county and the sheriff's office.
Well, I would like to see us working with the county and the sheriff's office on testing this. They're not going to do it countywide, and we have a discrete population, and it is useful.
Well, we have a discrete population that's aged for the most part. You know.
Yeah, well, we don't need the.
I don't think it represents sort of the cross section of the demographics in the county. So I just don't, it's very interesting to me. I think the county should be doing it. I absolutely believe the county should be doing it. I support public health. I think, public health in this country has gone to hell and needs to be corrected. But I just don't see it as, a SAM issue. And certainly, Kishen can do, and we talked about it previously with the first round of testing, that, you would, go to the county and discuss it as a product and a service, by the county. So
that's what I'd like to see.
I did discuss it, and Heather from county is there, so she got a hand raised.
So we'll start with any more questions from the board, Matthew, and seeing none others, then we'll go to Greg after Matthew.
Let me first just say I agree with Director Ruddock, and I hope that since you've already had I outlined where it says that the results in SAM does not benefit directly, the costs need to be paid by the county or sheriff's office. So I would be interested to know what your contact, where that led on the paying. But I wanted to ask BioBot, I have a difficult time understanding these dose estimates. And I'm going to talk about the nicotine one because the higher number is easily divisible into the number of people in the service area. It says daily nicotine doses falls between 30, which is almost none, and 9,172, which is 1/3 of everyone who lives in our service area. That's a huge difference. Could you explain more how we're to interpret these kind of numbers? Does this mean that there could be exactly 30 nicotine users who drop something in the toilet every day? Or there could be 1 out of every 3 people that live here?
So the important thing to remember with the doses is it's not talking about people. That is like individual cigarettes. And so it would not only be related to like the upper end of that dose estimate, as you said, if it's 1/3 of the population of the service area, it's not only just about every person using 1 cigarette. Obviously, people use multiple cigarettes. How that sort of goes back and forth is a matter of individual variability. But I also will say that I think you're correct. And one of the things that we have noticed in that dose estimate is that our goal was to sort of create practical bounds upon kind of what we were seeing. But we have had a lot of those sorts of questions, and it is something that we are in the process of revising to make something that is a little bit more practical rather than relying upon, as you had said, those parameters that create those very wide, uninterpretable dose estimates.
So they are uninterpretable. Well, okay, thanks. I guess I understand now that I didn't know why I didn't understand.
Okay, Greg.
By a remarkable coincidence, back on December 30th, the board member of another local agency and I wrote Supervisor Miller and trying to see who else, his staff members, requesting improved testing on fentanyl on the Midcoast, providing test strips. Now, of course, we know what happened on December 31st, so nothing got done. And then on February 2nd, I traded some emails with Mark Muehlman and Clara, can't see her name easily here, of San Mateo County Public Health, Clara Boyden. And I still haven't received a reply on the county's programs to combat the fentanyl epidemic. Test strips were one of the issues. So while we were all talking, I've written them again, passed on the agenda here from Sam with a request that San Mateo County Public Health consider joining this program. I see there's a Heather here from San Mateo County Public Health, and I'd be glad to bring her into this discussion. But it is clear this is an issue of community concern and risk, has been since the fall. So, yeah, I agree. Most of us are older, but a lot of us have kids that are at risk. So I'm interested in having this move forward. I'm happy to help try and raise the money for San Mateo County Public Health to do it, but we would need Sam's cooperation. Can we at least get you to agree that you will support the measurement if we get somebody to fund it? Thanks.
Thank you. Heather?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that presentation, and thanks for the chance to be able to talk to you all. I just had a couple of questions actually about some of the data. I thought it was really interesting. I don't know if I could speak for San Mateo County on this issue as a whole. There are some other, I'm not sure about, I know you said you emailed Mark. I can't speak to that. He's our director. So should I ask my questions and then we can probably...
Please.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the presentation. I find this data very interesting. I've also been in contact with Marin County, so I know that they are doing this testing with you as well. I was just wondering, when you were talking about the comparisons actually, and you have the sample comparisons, are those comparisons is that everyone else you're testing with, or are they similar demographic profiles to Half Moon Bay, or is it like similar population, or is it just like everyone?
So that, yeah, I think I had mentioned it, and I apologize if I wasn't clear in the presentation. And so those are 114 different sampling sites across 38 states. And so they are not, it is considered a nationally representative subset of sampling locations. The next step for us, and really this is contingent upon as we start to onboard more and more sampling partners and just have the pool of candidate comparison communities to be able to make those sort of similar comparisons, that is the next step. It's something I'm tasked with for the next couple months, is to build that out and what exactly that looks like. But it really for us is actually being confident in having enough of those comparison communities to make like actual insights into what exactly does a similar community look like.
Yeah. And then I was wondering about the turnaround time, because so you're testing every week. Do you get the data back and the results back? How quickly can you get it back?
So for the turnaround time, usually it's an overnight shipping that we provide as well. And then so it's typically about 3 days of lab processing time between preparation and analysis. And then usually another few days for data review. Right now, Sewer Authority is receiving it on a monthly cadence, but we are in internal talks to be able to make it available in weekly form, especially for public health customers who are more reliant upon just being able to ingest raw data on that weekly basis. And so, yeah.
And then, so you're testing, are you just pulling samples once a week, or are you testing multiple days, but only collecting the data like 1 day a week?
So right now it's only sampling once per week. And so, yeah, we do have other partners where we do sample multiple times per week. And then typically once we receive both those samples in the lab, they'll go into the same batch in the lab.
Mm-hmm. I didn't introduce myself to you. I'm Heather Eastwood. I'm an epidemiologist with San Mateo County. I've been working there for 6 years now. And so I'm working with Half-Moon Bay Sewer Authority with their COVID testing, their wastewater testing. And so I've come into this through the wastewater lens. I'm not the drug epidemiologist. I do wastewater testing. Mostly for like COVID and other like influenza-like illnesses, respiratory illnesses. So this was interesting to me, though, to hear about this. And then we do have our drug people that I can bring this information back to. And I know that the public health department, we are really interested in getting this data. I saw it in the packet and I was kind of sharing it out with them. But I would love to keep talking to you all about how we can best use this data since we have it.
Thank you, Heather. Jeremy.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a quick question. If you guys are only sampling for drugs, probably not relevant to this question, but both EPA and the state are regulating new perfluorinated substances, PFAS. That will ultimately get regulated as part of SAM's sludge. So we haven't asked to do it yet, but it's probably coming. Are you guys sampling for that, or are you sampling elsewhere for that? Because I think that's going to be something that we're going to need to look at in the future.
So we are not currently. I'd say one of the challenges with that is the question of what is PFAS, because they get talked about as if they are sort of the same family and that it's very easy to test for. One of the challenges that we've had with our R&D is that there are hundreds of thousands of things that you could actually incorporate, and they all have to be tested for completely separately. So I will say that there are ways, and I know that the EPA has sort of done more of those sort of specific environmental contaminant testing techniques than we have, but it is something that we've looked at. But I think that is one of the main challenges for us, is just that what exactly are we testing for? Because that encompasses a very wide variety of chemicals when people use that umbrella term of PFAS.
There's two main ones to look at. One's PFOA, one's PFOS. Those are the ones that there are currently rulemakings over. So anyway, I don't want to tie up a lot of time, but that is something that's going to be significant in the future.
It sounds like this is an up and coming industry. I think I hear a consensus from the board that we don't want to have Sam paying for this. Are we willing to work with others who are willing to pay for this?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's supposed to pay for it,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's certainly inexpensive.
It is inexpensive, I think. I don't like it being particularly targeted to particular very specific areas, but I think as a community as a whole, it's probably worthwhile. I don't want to be have people say, oh, well, you're being racist because you're testing this community or that community. But I think if we did it as a SAM plant in general, instead of just specific sites, I think that would be a worthwhile.
All merges together at the plant.
It's all so there is a consensus, and let's go into closed session.
So do I take it to understand that starting April 1, we don't need to do the testing? We put a pause on testing till such time that we get any information on funding from other agencies?
Let's see if we can get funding from the county, from the sheriff, from other public health agencies.
You know, I think COVID testing is, the county should be COVID wastewater testing, I think. And
yeah, we don't pay for that. That's free.
Yeah.
So that's fine. That's going on.
Yeah.
So this one is our last sample will go out tomorrow. So we'll go ahead with that. It goes on Tuesday of every month. Mm-hmm. So we'll put a stop starting April 1.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
And there is some staff time involved when this is underway, in addition to the fee. So I think, if it turns out that another agency is willing to pay for the data, I would certainly support continuing to do what's necessary to provide the materials to be tested.
Well, and the funding should cover our administrative overhead, staff support costs.
Well, I hear two different points of view on that, but let's see if we can have anybody to join in first.
Well, it's nice to know that MCC is willing to help. Great.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Aaron who's raised his hand.
So I've collected the samples several times. It takes 6 minutes. I collect it when I do my other samples. I put it into a tube. I box it up. It's 6 minutes of my time.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, I'd like to see us, do at least that, because I think this does seem like it could be very valuable. But I also think the cost of actually paying for it should come from another agency.
I would like to thank the BioWork team for having logged in tonight at the meeting. Although they're on the East Coast, they were good enough to come in and make the presentation. The entire team, thank you very much. All
thank you.
Thank you. You're doing good work.
Yes.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And Jeremy, on this closed session item, I think we wanted to get the information as to where we're at on the various aspects of it in order to better inform the decision-making on item 4B, which is to enter into a contract with SRT to the preliminary design of Sam's fourth main in Montera rehabilitation project. Are we going to need more than just the information to make it to give you a go ahead on something? Maybe we could split this closed session item into two pieces.
Well, I think I don't know that I have a long closed session other than discussions that might bear upon this issue. So I don't know that it's a long closed session.
Okay.
I mean, you have people, it looks like somebody has a comment right now. It's up to you whether you want to do the.
I have a point of order question. How are we going to be notified when the closed session is over so we can rejoin the conference?
That was my question too.
Well, do you have a waiting room you can put people into electronically? That's the way you'd ordinarily do it, but I don't know if you have that capability.
No, Jeremy, since you are on Zoom, I can't mute ourselves and talk because you're going to be on Zoom. Otherwise, people would be to.
Another option would be to have or you guys could just call me. You could mute and silence the. Yeah, you could do that and then just call me directly. That might work.
And you could be on speakerphone then.
Right.
Okay.
We could just set a time certain to come back.
We could set aside a time certain. It's 7:52 right now. What's your estimate on this on the time for this closed session discussion?
Yeah, but I think Jeremy on the speakerphone would be better so that people don't have to log in again and again. We'll mute ourselves.
Right, they can just stay here and we'll just basically mute it and mute and remove the video, and they can just stay on the Zoom, and then when we come back, we'll just be rejoining it and unmuting and putting the camera back on.
That works technologically, everybody? Sure.
Yes.
If everybody says yes, I don't know.
But I would say maybe 15 minutes, and so maybe 8 to 10.
Choices to reorder this item down to the bottom at the closed session.
Yeah, we've got consultants here for one. So let's try it this way. We're still learning this Zoom thing.
So we'll mute ourselves and then we call Jeremy on the phone.
That sounds, yeah.
Yeah, so just I'm going to go ahead and say, just to, out of abundance of caution here, we have a one closed session. We're going to go out of order on it per the prior direction of the board for a conference legal counsel to discuss anticipated litigation in 2 potential cases pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9. We've indicated to those attending virtually and in person that the closed session should be completed on or around 8:10 p.m.
8:10, we will do that.
Yeah. So with that, I think we should go to closed session. So you should mute and turn the camera off and then call me directly on my office line or my cell phone, either way.
Yeah, we would have to do a CDP. We would have part of them.
Crazy. It's kind of one out of that.
Okay.
So if you take it to the left and then right on the ball.
All right, welcome back, everyone. And it is 8:11. We're coming out of closed session, no reportable action having been taken. And let's return to item 4B for discussion and action to authorize the general manager to enter a contract with SRT Consultants to complete the preliminary design of Sam's Montero Force Main Rehabilitation Project in an amount not to exceed $370,080.
Thank you, Chair. So for this session, we do have engineers from 3 member agencies here. I have Mars here in person, I have Tiffin and John Rayner on Zoom. And it's the joint efforts of all the engineers that we were able to put out an RFP for this job for doing the design of the Sam Montero Force Main Rehabilitation Project. The board gave us an approval in the month of February, and then we issued the RFP on February 14th. We sent it out to 10 engineering firms, and we had an optional meeting at SAM for the potential bidders. There were 2 bidders who, there were 2 potential bidders who participated in the meeting at SAM. They came into SAM, they explained the requirement, and then the bids were due on February 14th. Out of 10, we received only 1 response. The balance, some of them said that they were overwhelmed with projects and were not able to take on this additional work. And for some of them, it was too small a project to handle. They were handling very large projects. So, well, we are here with 1 proposal from SRT, which was submitted to us on the deadline date of March 14th. And it was also decided that the engineers from the respective agencies will have a discussion with the shortlisted candidate, with the shortlisted consultants. And since we received only 1, we interviewed and had discussions with SRT consultants. There were a number of questions put forth to SRT, and we got a lot of things clarified, and then we decided to bring it to the board to take a decision. And we came up with, we also had discussions with the member agency managers subsequently, and thought we should go ahead with 3 options. First option was to award the contract to SRT in an amount not to exceed $380,000. And SRT Consultants' proposal is basically to do a preliminary design evaluation along with certain permitting requirements and environmental surveying requirements, which is more detailed in the attachment to the staff report. The second option would be to just go ahead with the preliminary design, and that would be not to exceed $186,000, where only the RFPs of task 1 and 1, 2, 3 is, and 4 reduced task for task 4 is included, while 5, 6, 7, and 8, which are basically permitting and field investigation services, will be done at a later date. So we could do the option 2 and get the balance done by a different firm or by SRT that can be brought back to the board at a later date. And option 3 is, of course, doing nothing, but if we do not, that is not to award any engineering contracts at this point of time. So for each of these options, we have staff has listed on certain advantages and disadvantages. We also have Tanya from SRT Consultants amongst us, who is ready to provide any clarifications or answer any questions.
Okay, let's bring it back to the board. Matthew.
The middle option, I'm really unclear. What do we get for 186,000? Task 3 is a final preliminary design report. That's not a design, correct?
Yes, that's right. That's not a complete design.
Tanya, would you like to pull a chair up? Sit next to Tim. Next year.
So from there, we have to then go to complete design, and as already been mentioned, that can be a lengthy process. And then task 4 is environmental, and it basically says we'll prepare materials to get ready to do the CEQA clearance and anything else for environmental, but it doesn't say we'll have a CEQA approved CEQA process in our hands so we can start work. So that's my question. Okay. What do we get?
The question is and for the audience, this is Tanya Urofsky. She is with SRT Engineering, and she is, that's the firm that set forward a response to our request for proposal. So we're discussing the details, and the details are in the agenda online if you want to head through it digitally. So go ahead, Tanya. And we'll do a Q&A from the board to Tanya and Keisha.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I heard several questions, so I'm going to just repeat them, sure, if you don't mind. And so one, I think the first question was, what do we get what is the preliminary design report? So first and foremost, we received an RFP that was developed by the member agency engineers together with the general manager. And so the attempt was made to respond to the RFP in the best manner possible. So the preliminary design report was one of the items that were listed in the RFP. The other very important item that I think came from the board and was reflected in the comments or what we saw as an RFP from the member agency engineers was to do the alternative analysis, evaluation of the size of the route, of the material for the pipeline. So that's part of the work. Then we brought in our own suggestion for consideration, and that is to look at alternative methods of construction. The reason for that was I was worried that the schedule was too short to actually do a traditional design bid build. And that would put Sam and the member agencies at risk of not being able to complete the work, meaning the construction work on time, considering that there's pressure to complete it. So we started looking at what the industry is now very much favors, the agencies, the state favors as various design build methods. And there are such things, progressive design build, regular design build, and I'm not here to give you a lecture on that, but I will be happy to answer any questions you have about that. But what I thought would be conducive to is to move forward with the work that is necessary anyway. Doesn't matter which method you use, you need the alternative analysis. That was the desire of the board. And the conceptual engineering report that sets forth the criteria for the design is necessary for the work as well. So that's what that option provides you. The full option that we provided in the proposal includes a geotechnical investigation, the potholing plan that was required in the RFP, a full survey, and start of the evaluation of requirements for the compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act and the local coastal program, San Mateo County. It did not include the environmental review work, as in that work should lead to us identifying what studies we need. The survey and other field investigations will help with that. And then we can, Sam and the board will consider what needs to be done as far as CEQA goes in the CDP. Did I answer a question, Director?
Matthew.
It sounds to me like this is barely starting. If we go through for option 2, how long would you estimate that would take? Option 2.
The schedule in the RFP was very short, with the presentation to the board in May. So,
I'm sure.
June 26th was in the RFP. We said that we'll present the
sorry, I apologize. So we're back to calculate from that is to present something to the board. The staff has to review it in May. The member agency engineers will have to review it. Then the board will hear the preliminary recommendations and receive a presentation. Then the board will provide comments. Then we'll go back to review and incorporate the comments. So that's the work. So the majority of this is review and field work.
Will that be sufficient to get us to a coastal development permit exemption? Go to the Coastal Commission and ask for this exemption at that point?
It would be sufficient to determine that. Hopefully.
To determine that.
But until we actually go to the county and, well, first of all, as you of course well know, I don't need to tell you, to receive an exemption from the coastal development permit, this board will have to make a determination that either this project is exempt from CEQA, which I seriously doubt it is, but we also can go for a negative declaration, or the next level it would be mitigated negative declaration. With a negative declaration, it would be safe and low risk to apply for a coastal permit exemption, which is what CDX is with the county. But you have to make a determination first at this board level. You have to make findings that this is a proper level of environmental review under CEQA. Then we'll have to post with the county, go through the public review process, and then we can go and apply for the CDX, which I would honestly suggest we do. Because the county then can decide whether or not that is an appropriate level.
Yeah. Is that good, Matthew?
This really feels to me like the best that we can go for is a mitigated neg deck. The project crosses at least 2 identified creeks and several other drainages.
It's going to be complicated.
It's going to be complicated. We're not going to get a negative declaration out of this. I can't see that.
Well, because the project involves, tunneling under 2 or 3 creeks. Yeah. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
So there's the potential for coastal, environmentally sensitive habitat. And as we know, we had an incident with the IPS previously when lack of project management and lack of communication with the contractor, resulted in violations of ESHA and additional cost and problems with the Coastal Commission, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess my question was going to be like, why wouldn't you do, have an environmental sub-consultant, right out of the gate? You've excluded it here. And it seems to me that the environmental work is critical both for CEQA and permitting, because you got to know what it is you're going to permit. So I don't understand your reasoning about why you did not include biological work, because I think it's going to be really critical, and I understand that it's been raised in the staff report that these are important issues. So,
thank you, Director Harvick. It's a very sound and good question. I appreciate that. In order to recommend biological work, all these other alternatives need to be addressed, and the project description needs to be developed. And we don't have enough information to engage a CEQA consultant yet. That's why it is.
Well, I'm talking about biological consultant. Seems to me that a biological consultant, first of all, would be looking at baseline conditions, what's out there, and, what do you need to address in your project, in your mitigations, in your permitting, et cetera. So I'm not talking necessarily about a CEQA consultant. I'm talking about a biological resources consultant, which is not accounted for here.
That's right. That's correct. I guess I'm not being clear. I maybe misuse of words as CEQA consultant. It's a team of consultants, right? There's a biological, there's historic preservation issues, archaeological issues. There are all kinds of consultants that we may need, but we need to develop projects first. We don't have a project description. In order to get a project description, we need to do the field work. And we need to do the alternative analysis for this board to approve the route of the pipeline, the size of the pipeline.
Except where the route is going to be, right? You do know something about where the project is going to be located, its general footprint, especially if you're talking about one pipe and then a parallel pipe next to that. So you do know enough to actually hire somebody to start, evaluating what resources may be impacted. And it seems to me, we've been talking in other areas about, especially when you refer to design build, of working on the permitting while you're doing the design. But you can't do the permitting really until you understand the biological. So it seems to me that you have to include a biological resources consultant right out of the gate in order to expedite any permitting you might need and CEQA. So I think that's a missing piece. I think even based on what you're saying, we do know enough to get going. And it looks to me also like typically I've been a project manager on natural resources projects. So typically we don't develop a project description until we have a 35% design. And it looks to me like with option 1 or 2, we don't even get a 35% design. So I don't see how we're actually going to do this on that compressed timeline. And I think if we can extend that timeline by working with the regional board, that would be helpful. So I would just say I think you need a biological resources consultant with option 1 or 2. Barbara?
What we have before us now seems to me a start. And I'm sure you're right about being a biological resources consultant. I think it's really important to get things going and doing the surveys and so forth. I don't know if SRT would be willing to add a biological consultant to the scope of this initial review. The question I had is, SRT designed the Granada force main, correct? And the problem that the environmental problem was not the fault of the design or anything. It was that the yard, they laid out the pipe in the wrong direction because where the yard was supposed to go.
I wasn't fault the design.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm just saying. So I think that's something to remember is that we've already put in, is this pipeline going to be very similar to the Granada Force Main?
It's a good question, Zerkin. It is. However, the difference is when we did the Granada Force Main, it had a significant failure. The community was hugely impacted. This board made a very quick decision to go forward with replacing immediately. We then designed mitigation measures to prevent impact on biological resources by doing horizontal directional drilling.
And did you have this kind of biological report?
We did.
So you would presumably do that here, just you're not proposing it in step one.
That's right. I didn't think it was necessary at that space. I might be wrong. You guys are making very good points, and we have used the very solid, good environmental firm. Your engineers asked that question as well. WRA, who is very familiar with the coast and has very solid reputation. So the Granada Force Main was permitted under CDX. It was a straight replacement. There was no alternative analysis. There was no one pipe or two pipes. We are a bit of an unknown territory here. This board requested an alternative analysis, which is not a straight replacement. So, which is fine. It's something to do.
I'm seeing it in a different, I'm understanding it better. So thank you. Keep going.
But now, if we go through this process and we, and review and offer options and see what options are advantages and disadvantages, and the board will make a decision, that decision is pivotal in where this project will go from the environmental perspective.
What are the options? I mean, we only have a limited space to put it, and it's
the board and your engineers requested to review the pipe materials, the pipe size, how many pipes, what?
And alignment.
And alignment. So no, I don't know where it exactly goes. I mean, on one hand I do, but on the other hand, you requested alternative routes, alignments.
So what does not mean then to do a project description, you have to go through task 8? I mean, if you don't know where it's going to go, you have to have a survey. That's task 7. And task 8 is the geotechnical report. Where can you put it with the geological considerations? And without that, how can you describe the project?
Well, there are two methods, right? Well, it's a pipeline. We can put it. The geotechnical recommendations will contribute to the design of the trench, and any structures that is really further down the line. Yes, the survey would be nice to have. The survey is really important.
Is there an existing survey for the original pipe? That would be insane.
They wouldn't have proper plans. These are plans made in late 90s. Yeah.
And no survey work was done. You're telling me no survey was done for a construction
Probably,
project?
but I don't know. We don't have any documentation on that. I don't know.
Well, I feel like option 1 makes a lot of sense. And perhaps we should ask for an addition of a biological report, either for an awful seed number or come back to us at our next meeting if there was a possible.
We're not going to support option one primarily for the cost reasons. And that is, we can't come up with our share of $7 million of our 62% cost for this project over a period of 1 year.
I'd like to hear from Peter and I understand what she's saying though.
Yeah, but it's important. So this project has to be done in 1 year. And by the way, we don't think it can be done in 1 year.
It can't be done in 1 year.
It's longer. So
I don't think does anyone think this project can be done in 1 year? No.
And I think we want to work with the consent decree to see if we can get extended time. We're willing to support option 2 tonight. But we do think you should add, biological study, but we're not ready to do option 1 and try to cram everything in 1 year because we don't think we can do it anyway, and we can't finance it in that short of a period.
That's what they're saying.
We don't have.
You don't want the survey.
We don't have $11 million in reserve, so we can pony up, $7 or $8 million in 1 year. Right,
but this is all.
I think you just described all 3 of the number 83.
Yeah. So, we're not going to commit to an option on a schedule we don't think is realistic and doesn't have the information we actually need to move forward expeditiously. That is, environmental and advanced, permitting and things like that. So we can support option 2 and get started on that work.
You'd add the biological.
Wait a minute, I thought I was nice.
I'm just saying for last year.
Oh, I am looking at the big picture. The big picture is that we've been talking about this project since 2009, when we had that initial agreement with that environmental company saying that yes, we would replace the pipeline. Yes, we would put in the Princeton pump station. Yes, we committed ourselves to that. So from the big picture, we have to do it because we have a lawsuit in our hands that says we have to do it. The lawsuit has a deadline. The deadline may be postponed by another 3 years, but it's still a deadline.
So we don't actually have to make a decision tonight.
So this, wait a minute, I'm not finished yet. Yeah. So this project needs to be done, whether it's now or whether it's 3 years from now.
Right.
It still needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And when I look at the complex nature of what we are trying to do, I know there's going to be delays in this project as it is presented. And I also know that there is going to be delays in getting the material for the pipeline, whatever the decision is on the material. Because I have seen delivery times for construction material that go 12 months, 16 months, 18 months for the stuff to even arrive. So when we look at this time period that we still have, which has that definite deadline that we are now agreeing on or almost agreed on, then I'm saying, for God's sake, let's start now. Let's start this process because who knows how many more delays are being built in when we start this process. And to delay it further by saying, oh, we do only half of this step, to me is a big mistake because it will kick us in the teeth then when the penalty comes in at the end of the deadline.
Option 2 still starts the way. Harvard?
I agree that it's important that we get this done. The question is the timing and whether or not we can afford to do everything in the 1 year. I think we all understand that that's not going to happen. Option 2, with the addition of having a bioresources consultant sign on, makes the most sense. It gives us the time to work out a non-design build contract. So I'm in agreement with Debbie that option 2 at this point makes the most financial and existential sense to do, to make it possible to do it.
Thank you. Barbara. If we support option 2 tonight, does that get you started? I mean, are any of the things in option 1 critical for you to be able to do option 2?
There's the start of the work is the same thing.
Okay. So we're just,
I'd like to say something.
yeah.
My preference is to award the full contract. We should have started on this in January. We're already delayed. I am shocked to hear that we are even remotely considering 2 pipelines or changing the diameter. That's nothing that MWSD will support under any circumstance. I thought we were simply replacing a broken pipeline and then initially, and then we were going to be fixing the rest of it over the few years. Along the same route, assuming that's feasible, I'd hate to have the survey come back. When we built our house, we had to have a survey. The property stakes were all in. The county said, no, you need a survey. All of a sudden, my property line moved 30 feet. My engineering went all to hell, had to start all over. And I'd like to be able to just do this using the existing pipeline and saying it's been there for 30 years, 40 years. It's our right of way now. We're not going to change it. And I don't want to see us delayed. I want to make sure we can get FEMA money. I want to make sure that we are appearing to ERAF and Water Quality Control Board like we're not stalling. I mean, stalling is, we've got a $40 million fine looming over us. If you think 380,000 is a lot, 40 million is going to be a bit to chew. For ERAF and grants, we need to be shovel ready. I'm worried about inflation. I'm worried about the quality of subs and labor. And if we don't get started now, we may be at the end of the track. And Sam is, among people I have talked to, considered one of the most at-risk sewer plants in California. And delaying it only makes this and proves the point. And frankly, I don't think we can ignore the fact that this agency sent out RFPs to 10 companies. And we only got one response. That is going to, that is something that if we don't start lining up our subs, if we don't start lining up our work, if we don't get in line on the permitting, because we all know how long permitting can take, I would suggest we go for a CDX and start getting in line. And my preference is to award the full contract, but I would like, if we have to go, because Half Moon Bay insists, with the half contract, I want it on the record that Montero supports the full 380,000 and wants to get this done in a timely fashion.
There's another concern that I have. We have recently decided on an increase in our sewage rates that it is still going to be presented to the public in May. We have envisioned a 6% increase in the first year and a 9% increase in the 2 years following. I would warn the other agencies that together with us have the same plan, that it is really necessary to to adjust your sewage rates.
Our rates go up every year or every other year. They've been going up and up and up.
And that it's sufficient to take in these kind of blows, because as was just said, there could be another major blow with a $40 million fine. And that needs to be realized now. We need to know that we have the money to pay for that. And the only way we're going to do that is to increase the sewage rates.
We're only going to support option 2 this evening. Any more comments from the board? Let's go to Greg, and then we'll come back to Barbara.
I know you all are much deeper in this than I am, but I'm wondering, will we end up wasting money if we retain the biological consultant before we have a final design? Or are we going to have the biological consultant evaluate the impact for all possible alternatives that might come into play, and then we will be wasting money when only one of them eventuates? Or is there no risk of wasting money on the biological consultant and having stuff have to be redone? I'm just curious about that.
I think Director Roddick made a point that we know where the pipeline goes, in a general sense. That no, I don't think it will be a waste.
You're going under 3 creeks. You're going to have to address, you're going to have to mitigate those impacts.
That's true.
Right. So we need a biological study, biological report. Barbara.
Right. If tonight, partly in deference to our colleagues from Half-Moon Bay, we adopt option 2, when would we foresee looking at these additional tasks? So my question is really, is it getting started on these and then fairly soon taking a look at the additional tasks? What would be the metric that would say, okay, it's time to look at doing all these other things, including at that time, a biological thing?
Sorry. That would not be possible before mid-June. The preliminary design report will be presented to the board in mid-June, June 26th to be precise. And once we decide on that, then we can go ahead with the rest of the tasks.
The surveys and
that'll be a couple of weeks after that, because once the board decides what route, what alternate to take, then I'll have to reach out. I don't know if the board wishes to go ahead back to SRT and request for rest of the tasks, or go out for another RFP, or what. It's not clear, but it's not definitely going to be before June.
I would certainly get to work on the biological while you're doing the report. You know, get an initial assessment. You know, a ground level view.
Where's that money coming from? We're not authorized.
Well, you might have to add it to the 186,000. Perhaps they can come back and in June bring a budget.
So in June, what would you suggest adding for a biological consultant? My question
she was, be able to tell us.
My question is, why don't we go to the county who's doing the permitting, not Half-Moon Bay, and ask them if we need a biological consultant? Since we're following the same route, we're probably going to be crossing the creeks in the same place.
But you're going to disturb the area around the creeks when you're undergrounding, I'm guessing. There's going to be some impact.
I think
take it to the county. I'm fine with that.
Actually, if we decide not to change the route, just change the pipe in kind, use the same size, same material, and as close to the alignment, we don't even have to do a preliminary design evaluation. We can save a lot of time and start straight away the design.
I vote for that.
I vote for that.
Am I right, Tanya? To a large extent, we'll be able to save time.
Yes. I do want to say, I think it's good we're doing the alternatives analysis. You know, there's been more development since that initial pipe was put in. There's going to be even more development. There's going to be ADUs. Potentially, there's an affordable housing project. There's problem with pressure in the pipe. I think looking at, can we have a diameter that allows for some growth, but also deals with engineering and technical issues relating to the soundness of the pipes and their ability to convey water. I think it's worth looking at. And the agency managers already agreed to that, so.
Tiffin, you're on. I'm going to ask you the question because you've presented some of this data to the Montero board. You have said that that size pipeline is adequate to get us through build out, including the affordable housing project. We don't anticipate a whole lot more build out in Montero because we've sized our pipelines for the LCP and the build out, and most of the houses have ADUs already. In one, whether they're legal or not is a whole other question.
We're not looking for.
But I believe Montero has had our engineer work with Sam on answering those questions already. And that's why we don't anticipate changing the pipeline size, diameter, interior diameter to have it be any more than the nominal difference between the ductile iron and the HDMI, because they're not going to be HDP.
HDMI.
Okay, they're not going to be exactly the same. Oh, HDMI is, yeah, right. Okay, TV. But I don't want to be looking at putting in a bigger pipeline. That's going to get appealed to coastal. It's going to take years.
I don't support a bigger pipeline.
Okay, well, now you would.
But that's not on the agenda.
That's right. So I would move that we approve option 2, which is award a contract to SRT Consultants for an amount not to exceed $186,000 for the March 14th, 2023 proposal provided by SRT, excluding work on tasks 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the RFP. And reducing the scope and fee for task 1, project management, due to the decrease in the scope, and reducing the fee for task 4, environmental support, to only provide an evaluation of the environmental compliance needs. And of course, we also have to make it clear that we will pay under protest for this project because of litigation.
Yeah,
and that's not a surprise. When you lose, you're going to have a whole lot to pay.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. I see that Greg had his hand up. So Greg.
I just wanted to make a comment because Director Ruddick made the point about capacity for growth. This is something I've been spending some years studying now. And as a ratepayer, I would like to say that if there's going to be any growth, they have to pay for the increase in capacity. Existing ratepayers should not have to subsidize expansions and take the risk whether that growth occurs or not. It's one of the reasons we're all in trouble, is that we built assets we can't sustain financially. So just, while I understand there are plans, I'm glad to hear Montero sized for it. But I don't want to see us spending any money to expand capacity unless the developer comes and pays for it forever. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to add one more line to that motion. I'd like the alternatives analysis to include stormwater storage for Half Moon Bay.
No, it's not relevant to the study.
It's very relevant.
I will amend my motion.
Barbara?
Well, I'm prepared to support this motion tonight. I would prefer to see us get more work started on this, but I think getting any work started is what's the responsible thing. I actually really feel strongly after looking at this that we should be doing the additional work. But, let's get started with this moving, and then hopefully come back and get all of these other, aspects of the project, possibly including a biological consultant going as soon as it can come back to us for review.
I agree with that. So we have a motion and a second, and I want to note in the minutes that Half Moon Bay refuses to even discuss stormwater storage. in Half Moon Bay.
It's not on the agenda.
But it was in my comment about what I wanted added, and that's where I'm going to say, neither was the biological person, so they can both stay in the minutes.
She can note it for the record, but directors can make comments for the record.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm going to learn.
Let's have a.
I think it's clear that Sam has to get moving on this, and I will support either one of these to get things going. I'm also mindful of we're gambling here with what happens with ERF. They could mumble for another 6 months. Then where are we? So we better get this going.
Well, we have an attorney who's engaging a consultant that previously worked for us with good results. So we're going to work that angle.
Mm-hmm. But, well, we know who the other side is.
We're not going to make the deadline in any case, even with option one.
We need to look for an extension. It's 8:55.
It's 8:55.
We're almost done.
We've got another couple items. I'd like to continue this meeting for half an hour until 9:30.
I would like to call the question on the motion in a second.
We have a motion and a second, and let's call the roll call and then decide on extending the meeting.
So this vote is for the.
This is for option 2, and I'm not quite sure what the changes.
6,000, as Director Radha mentioned.
I just read the
option
as in the staff report.
Okay, that's fine.
Can we restate the motion to make sure we have it clear?
It's as per the staff report.
Option 2 of the staff report.
Option 2 of the staff report. Okay.
Correct. Right.
So please call. We have a motion and a second from Deborah and her.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Dye?
Yes.
Director Radha?
Yes.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Radbach?
Yes.
Chair Slater Carter?
Yes. Reluctantly.
Okay, it passes.
Issue a purchase order for the structural instrumentation and controls and electrical engineering to design the Princeton pump station in an amount not to exceed $88,100. And item D is authorize the general manager to issue a purchase order to Birmingham Engineers for the purchase of primary sludge pumps in the amount of $43,815.
So did we vote for the extension of the time?
We did not.
Not as yet.
I would like to ask for an extension for half an hour. So move. Second from Peter. Hearing no anybody object? Hearing no objections, we will adjourn at 9:30.
Unless we're done earlier.
Of course.
Okay, moving on to the next item, what Chair stated on the Princeton pump station. We do have TJCA. Oh, a lot of them. Yeah, we have Haley there from TJCA. This is for the Princeton pump station. We are required to do that as per the CIP and as per the consent decree, which we have signed up with ERF to complete the project by June 30th, 2024. So our plan is to put together a design package so that we can go out for a bid. So the package pump station, which we thought of and we presented it as a feasibility report to ERF. That was our only option after weighing several options. Excuse me. Would consist of the equipment, would consist of electrical, would consist of instrumentation and all these other ancillary requirements for the design, electrical design, instrumentation, structural controls. So we reached out to TJCA, who had earlier done the investigation for us, and they were more familiar with the Princeton pump station. So they got a quote from TJCA to do this design. So upon their completing this design, if we approve it today, then we would package it together and intend going out for a bid for the complete pump station. And that is, we are hopeful of doing that in June, go out for a bid, and we will be able to complete it by June 30th, 2024. So that's the gist of it. And we have Terry from TJCA here to answer questions. And
just a minute. Where do you get the 88,100 from? Because when I add up the numbers, I get to $120,630.
There's an optional item, Director Decker. So that optional item is not considered for it.
So the $24,700 is taken away from the $120,630. That still doesn't get us to 88,100.
I'm not able to get that sheet.
I have the sheet here in front of me.
Okay.
And I have added the numbers.
Sorry.
And if you take 120,630, and then you minus the optional item of 24,700, then you come to $95,930, not $88,100.
I don't know. I'm not able to do the math quickly, but I thought we had done the 88 and I got 88,100.
Well, I've taken out the optional, the one that the building upgrades optional of 24,007.
Are you on page 258 of the PDF?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we remove the 7830 ventilation optional. We remove the building.
Wait. We
task 4.
Sorry?
Task 4 is removed, optional.
Oh, that's also removed.
Yeah.
Okay, 7830. Then you got the 88,100. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Clear? Thank you very much. Okay, so it is 88,100. And would you like to ask any questions? Terry is here from TJCA.
I have no questions. Does anyone else?
No.
I see no hand raised. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Gerber? No, thank you. Let's do a roll call vote on this. Roll call.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Dye?
Yes.
Director Rada?
Yes.
Director Decker?
Yes.
Director Rada?
Yes.
Chair Slater Carter?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And moving on to D, authorize the general manager to issue a purchase order to Burlingame Engineers for the purchase of primary sludge pumps in the amount of $43,813. Move approval. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. No objections. General manager's report. We've got the monthly for February. Would you like to report on the scope of work for the engineering analysis of the fourth man?
Yeah. If there are no questions on 5A, I can move to 5B. 5B is the scope of work for engineering analysis of Montara force main pipe failure. This was discussed at the last board meeting, and it was decided that I'll bring the scope back to the board for information only. This scope was discussed with the member agency engineers, and we reached out to a firm from an exponent who have the experience in doing such type of analysis. And incidentally, we have the consultant amongst us, Mr. Subodh Medekar here in the public, who's actually come down from Southern California. He's going to be with us tomorrow and day after. So since he landed this evening, I requested that he be present on the board so that he can get introduced to the board. And yes, they're ready to start the task. So you start giving the documentation. And if you have any questions, staff is here to answer, or Subodh is here to answer.
Okay, no, we have no attorney report. Oh,
I'd like to make a comment on general manager's report, please. This is let's get a positive something in here. I went through all the daily reports and everything, and the plant is obviously running much better than it totally changed from January. So that's good, and that there were no SSOs in February at all. So things have gotten better.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you.
Let's hope it continues until tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
All right, attorneys, Greg.
So in looking at the scope of work, it isn't what I expected. I'm sure the firm you picked will do a great job explaining the water hammer, but that begs the question of what caused the shutoff and subsequent turn back on. And I thought that was the issue we were going to look at. There was a 100-fold increase in the flows on Pillorcitos Creek to the point where a couple of engineers who looked at it called it a river, not a creek anymore. And then there was the fact that the excess flows at the plant persisted for a day or so above the maximum design daily capacity of 9 million gallons a second. So it wasn't just the creek overflow, there was something else going on. And this report doesn't seem to be investigating the cause of the excess flows, which I view as the most critical part. The water hammer is an unfortunate derivative of trying to cope with those flows. So that's my comment and question. How come the engineers didn't see it necessary to deal with the underlying causes of the stress on the system? Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I will say I had hoped that if there was going to be an exam of what caused, if the failure was caused by something, because it happened all of a sudden. And so I'm curious what that something is. It could have been the little termites trying to get out of the mud or something. I don't know. I think for designing the new force main, it would be nice to know what needs to be taken into account on that.
Correct. That's why this requirement of analysis of the failure is extremely important, so that we can use whatever is the outcome of the report to make any modifications or suggestions in the upcoming design of the force main.
Okay, thank you. Attorney's report, nothing. Director's reports, hearing nothing. Future board consideration will be the progress on the Montero Force Main Rehabilitation Project. The Ops Committee is going to have an agenda item on the getting the agendas out in a draft or an incomplete form, and if that's possible, so that we can start working on reading them sooner. And Director Reddick just reminded me we were going to have an item to do a Public Records Act request on San Francisco PUC.
To get flow data,
to get the
release data.
Release data that they have, as opposed to what's available from the water gauges on the creek.
Yeah, we started doing the PRA, but then we realized that the MWSD engineer had already done the PRA and has got a lot of documents, ton of documents. I didn't want to repeat it.
Okay.
So we haven't had time to do that, but I can pass on all those information to the other engineers from member agencies. And
that'd be great.
If they want more information, we can always ask it.
Okay, sounds good.
Since it's already started, I thought
yeah, that's good. Good. And we have finished closed session.
Before we close, I see that Sheriff has come here. Have you come for the particular item that we discussed on?
Yeah, I apologize. We had a couple calls for service.
Did you have any comments or anything to make?
No, just here to listen.
It's over.
No.
Well, we'll fill you in.
I appreciate it.
Give you a cup of coffee to fill you in.
Sounds fair.
Sounds good. Okay. We are adjourned. No, but we have a muffin up there.
Okay.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you very much.